vacations, wear name-brand clothing, or drive new cars. It turned out the simple lifestyle in which they had raised me would serve my family well as we navigated the murky economic landscape in the aftermath of the Great Recession. Still, growing up in upper-middle-class suburban America, we were the givers and never the recipients of charity. I was educated in private schools from kindergarten through college. I never wanted for anything. We didn't ask for help, and we would have never dreamed of using government aid. My misinformed belief was that most aid recipients were lazy, didn't work, and stole from those who had more money. It wasn't free help after all. It was the taxpayers' money. Someone was paying for it. Using government services was something good Christian families in the South just did not do. And if they did, they surely didn't admit it to anyone. The culture in which I'd spent my first 3 decades was that of the haves and the have-nots. At my Christian high school, in my private university's classes, at various churches I visited, discussions about the poor would often center around a token food or clothing drive during the holidays. Even these came with judgments. Desperate times call for desperate measures. On that humbling day back in 2010, we were in the middle of a recession that was turning our country upside down. 1 year earlier, my husband and I had both lost our jobs. We had a daughter who had just turned a year old, and we owned a house out of state that we couldn't sell. We now owed more on it than it was worth. My husband, Will, was working as a public school teacher in North Carolina, a state whose teachers were at the bottom of the national pay range. We had more month than money. I didn't realize how much we were struggling until I read a blog post about a woman who was feeding her family on a food stamps budget as an experiment to prove that those on food stamps could eat well. At the time, I had no idea what income level dictated whether someone was poor or rich. My parents had never revealed their exact income to me, and they'd taught me never to ask anyone how much money they made. A friend from church who knew of our struggle had recommended the post to me. When she told me the blogger's family was eating healthy on a food stamp budget, I couldn't wait to read all about it. Surely a food stamp budget must be close to what we paid for food, between $200 and $250 a month for our family of 4. Our groceries consisted of the basics because that was what stretched our dollars: rice, beans, a little meat, and canned produce. I would walk by the organic foods in the store and look longingly at the price tags before moving on, wishing we could afford to feed our family better. I was stunned when I realized this blogger's food stamp budget was $600 a month for a family the same size as ours. Boy, what I could do with a $600 monthly food budget. It seemed unreal. We'd feel rich. Our bellies wouldn't rumble at the end of the month. We could even buy organic. I'd make every inch of those stamps stretch, and we'd eat like royalty. That blog post prompted my visit to the food stamps office. We needed more food. I saw no other way. Pride comes before the fall. As the caseworker stared at me from behind her desk, I opened a manila envelope and gingerly pulled out our documents. I unfolded copies of our driver's licenses, our lease, my husband's pay stubs, and my last 3 months' checks from the newspaper where I was freelancing. I smoothed out the creases and stacked the papers neatly, as if a better presentation of our situation might salvage some dignity and convince the caseworker that we were indeed in need of aid. As she began examining my paychecks, I spoke up. I'm getting paid 10 cents per word to write feature stories. My income varies greatly. I see, she mused as she skimmed the documentation and began typing notes on her computer keyboard. I couldn't read her, and it made me nervous. I guess she doesn't want to get my hopes up, I thought. I sat on the edge of my chair, twisted the rings on my fingers, and looked out the window. Can she see through me, I wondered? Read my inward battle? 1 month I might make as much as $200, but another month might be only $40 or $50, I went on. I'm always on the lookout for story ideas, though, to pitch to my editor. I wanted her to know that I was a hard worker, but I also wanted to stay home with our babies. Although it didn't pay much, my newspaper job was allowing me to work from home. You see, ma'am, if I were to go out and get a full-time job as a reporter, which is the only job I'm really qualified for with my journalism degree, it wouldn't even cover the cost of daycare. I felt I needed to justify why I was staying home. Perhaps I was talking too much. I always said too much. Well, the computer makes the final decision, the woman explained. I'll input all of your information, and if you need help based on these numbers, you'll qualify. As I watched her review our documents, I realized I was no longer sure of my desired outcome. I wanted a